Welcome to KidMissing TV. Welcome to KidMissing TV. Today's episode is our second episode in the state of Maine. This is Mysteries in Maine. This episode is dedicated in loving memory to my cousin, Larry Lee, who died unexpectedly in March. We have 3 updates to start the show with today. One is out of Maine. Bernard Ross disappeared quite a long time ago. His parents recently received a letter from someone stating they knew what happened to him. They even referenced an article about him along with other missing cases in the state of Maine, of which thankfully there are a few. Police and the family want the letter writer, who was anonymous in the letter, to come forward, because if they truly do have information that might solve this case, then police need to talk to this person. The next update we have for you is a case that we brought you out of Canada, Adrian McNaughton. One thing that happened, well, before I get to that, a CBC, that's the Canadian Broadcasting Company, their radio arm, did a documentary on this case called Someone Knows Something. It was very well done. It was done by a gentleman named David Ridgen, R-I-D-G-E-N. He took several sets of cadaver dogs to the lakeside scene where the boy disappeared. He had a forensic artist do a drawing of Adrian, which was the drawing that you saw on the poster in the original show. That artist's name is Diana Trepkov. The family felt that the police drawing didn't look anything like Adrian, so that's why he had this done. The cadaver dogs, 4 sets of them, hit in the same area around the lake shore. They feel that the area needs to be searched further by police, needs to be maybe dug, maybe dove in those areas, because 4 sets of dogs, something is there. So I'll keep you posted on what, if anything, is found. My very last update is on the missing trio from Fort Worth, Texas. The oldest girl's sister's daughter, so I guess it would be her cousin, niece, I'm sorry, sent me this update. The Texas EquiSearch put sonar down into a lake where it had been rumored that the girls were put into a vehicle and shoved into said lake. They did find 3 vehicles in the lake. They said they would need at least $20,000 in order to send someone down and get the cars out of the lake. Everybody's passing the buck to everybody else. Police is saying go here, and the Army Corps of Engineers is saying go there, and it's really a big pain in the butt. Tim Miller even lent a sonar device to the police to look themselves. Like I said, the police were notified, the Army Corps of Engineers, whomever might own the lake. There's a dispute over that. The family wants this lake dredged and these cars brought up. Because even if their girls are not in one of these cars, somebody's loved ones could potentially be. But as I said, they're saying it's at least $20,000. They're saying it's very dangerous, very deep. So she's feeling pretty betrayed, and I want to thank her for sending this to me. And she wanted all of this information released and out there. The good news is, after she released all this information, the mayor wrote to her and said that she will look into it and see what she can do to get this accomplished. And I'll let you know, because she'll keep me informed. Her name is Maggie Arnold Jarvin. Okay, our local crime history case today, just for clarification, I knew this person when I was a kid. I grew up with his two younger stepsisters, and I knew his father and his stepmother. He also had a stepbrother from his father's marriage, in between the mother of the girls and his mother, whom I also knew very well, still do. He actually, his parents, his father and stepmother, lived in Douglas and in Uxbridge. So that's why this is local for us, even though it's out of Hudson. He was 19 when it happened. He was 20 years old when he was sentenced. His name was Walter Gould. On June 3rd, 1987, he murdered his 70-year-old maternal grandmother in Hudson. He stabbed her with knitting needles, and he took a glass decanter and smashed her head with it. It sounds absolutely horrendous, and from all accounts at the time it was. He was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. He has consistently tried to appeal. His appeals have been denied. Again and again. One thing that he did after he did this was he stole money from her, which was the motive for the crime in the first place, because she wouldn't lend him any more money because he wouldn't pay her back what he already owed her. He also stole jewelry, including diamond rings, from her, a bunch of coins. There were several things. And he even gave the diamond rings to his girlfriend as an engagement ring, and several necklaces to her. He was, from what I remember, didn't show any emotion either way. Utterly sociopathic. So, even though it was scary, not entirely, well, the way he did it was surprising, but not entirely surprising that he got in trouble. To most of us who knew him. When he went to jail, his father, Ralph, said, "Goodbye, Walter." His father passed away in May of 1999. I was unable to attend the service because I was going through chemotherapy at the time. Again, his initial appeal was in 1992. You can actually read that online if you look for Gould versus Commonwealth on Google. It's there. I want to spare you the bloody details, but they're all in the appeal. Basically, his appeal said that he didn't have good assistance of counsel, and that he felt there was something mentally wrong with him. Well, he had been psychologically evaluated, and they didn't see anything that would provide any information at his trial that would assist his claims in any way of an altered mental state. so the appeal was denied. Like I said, I did know him. And still know his family. Ayla Reynolds disappeared from Waterville, Maine on December 17th, 2011. She was 20 months old. She was last seen around 9 p.m. the night before. There have been several stories about what was actually found in the house, from blood everywhere to just a little bit of blood here to, so who knows what to believe. She was with her father, Justin DePietro, and his parents. We know there's been more than 1,200 leads in the case. People in the state of Maine, and I know this because I've much family there, as I mentioned at the beginning, are very passionate about this case, including my own family. So I don't doubt there's been many, many leads. Her mother was in drug rehab at the time that she disappeared. Her mother came out, and her mother and grandfather basically waged all-out war on her father. So it's a he said, she said, big, old, fat mess. And it's a shame because there's a 20-month-old child in the middle of that mess. When last seen, she had a broken arm. And again, there's disputes over that. If you listen to the mother and grandfather, the father broke the arm. If you listen to the father, he fell on her. So again, it is such a mess. The state police, the Waterville police, and the game wardens have searched. The game wardens are the best searchers anywhere. If they can't find you, you either don't want to be found or are hidden really, really well. Because the game wardens can find just about anybody, just about anywhere. And they're still looking. They're all still looking. A baby can't just disappear. You know, there has to be a reason. Again, she was 20 months old. It was December of 2011, which up there would be pretty darn cold. If you have any information, you can call the Waterville Police Department at 207-872-5551 or the Maine State Police at 207-624-7076. Amy Lynn Drake from Skowhegan, Maine, was 18 years old on November 24th, 2006. Amy disappeared on September 20th. On November 24th was the date her body was found. In 2015, Maine State Police Lieutenant Jeffrey Love said that some activity had happened in the previous 6 months on the case, which remains open, of course. He is the head of the Unsolved Homicide Unit of the Maine State Police Major Crime Unit. Detective Chris Tremblay, who is the original investigator assigned to the case, remains the primary detective. Now that's unusual after a period of time. He's been involved since day one. He always has and will continue to be hopeful that we can bring some closure to the family. Said Detective Love. Well, I guess it's Trooper Love. She disappeared without taking her purse, change of clothes, nothing. Her mother, Norma, reported her missing. Her body was found in the woods and fields about 2 miles southwest of the Skowhegan line. The reverend that did her funeral, actually last year, said he remembered sitting in the living room talking to her mom and realizing the sadness that came through her entire body when she talked about her daughter and losing her daughter, and not understanding why someone would do it. you know. Reverend Tanner of the Federated Church in Skowhegan, who actually officiated the funeral, remembered sitting in the mother's home and the sadness that came over her when she talked about losing her daughter, and when she talked about not understanding why someone would do that. He also said that some of Drake's friends from high school made posters and cards in her memory and talked about what she meant to them when he spoke recently. The thing he remembers most is the sadness, as he said. Drake called or visited her mother every day for her disappearance. So it was her mother who reported her missing because she hadn't heard from her for a few days, and this was very odd behavior. One of the people who is still a person of interest is her boyfriend, Jason Forbes, who lived on South Factory Street in Skowhegan. Easier said than done. He was sentenced in September of that year, just before her disappearance, to a 6-month jail term for assaulting her. Drake had reported to police he punched her in the head, he broke her nose, threw her to the floor, and threatened to kill her. Forbes pleaded guilty to the domestic violence charge. He was given him a stay that allowed him to remain free until October the 9th. So he had not started serving his sentence until when she was last seen alive. And court documents show he did have contact with her. If you plead guilty and you're planning on serving your charge, what would be the motive for you to murder the person anyway? I'm not sure that I understand why he would be a viable suspect, but he is a person of interest. So, if you have any information in this case, you can call the Maine State Police, 207-624-7141. Ashley Ouellette, February 9th, 1999. She was from Saco, Maine. On February 9th, she was a sophomore at Thornton Academy. She went to spend the night with friends. This case is kind of bizarre. It was less than a mile from her home in Saco. About 10:30, she called her parents to say goodnight. It was the last time they spoke to her. After that, she left her friend's house, went to the home of another friend, well, two brothers actually, Daniel and Stephen Sanborn, on Mast Hill Road. She had previously had a relationship with the older brother. She was 15, by the way. And their mother, a little perturbed, makes up the couch for her about 12:30 in the morning. She claims this is the last time she sees her. About 4 a.m., a motorist on Pines Point Road sees a body on the road. He slows and stops. The motorist calls 911. Body is still warm. It's 15-year-old Ashley. Police wonder if the two boys may have had something to do with what happened. I'm not sure I understand why she left her other friend's house in the first place to go to her ex-boyfriend's house. I don't understand, but police are pretty sure that those two boys know exactly what happened. They just need to prove it. Like I said, you'd think it'd be a slam dunk, but you have to have proof. You can't just say, well, you were blessed to see her. You know, silver bracelets. Doesn't work that way. We have, rules here. Her parents, Bob and Lise, filed a wrongful death suit against the Sanborns. They claim they had a reasonable responsibility to protect her from injury. They feel that Daniel killed her. The Sanborns claim that because Ashley was kicked out of her home and needed a place to stay, that she was responsible for herself. She was only 15. Well, nobody ever said she was kicked out of her house. She simply walked to her other friend's house to spend the night. Bob Ouellette was reunited with Ashley when he passed away in 2001. He was only 49 years old, died of a heart attack. He never got to see the killer brought to justice. Daniel Sanborn has been no stranger to police or the law since then. He has been in and out of prison and jail for charges ranging from drugs, theft, and even weapons charges. But he has never been charged with anything regarding Ashley's murder. Interestingly, Tony Torres, a young man that also disappeared, his father, Narisco Torres, said that his son's disappearance may be connected to the same people because he may have learned something when he attended the same parties as Daniel and his brother. And he may have been murdered to keep his mouth shut, basically. At least that's what his father believes, and that's what the newspaper has reported. So we tell it all here, you know. If you have any information, you can call the State Police Tip Line at 207-620-8009. Judith Hand was murdered on September 10th, 1971 in Farmington, Maine. Farmington is a fairly small town. I've been to Farmington many times, stayed in the motel there. Quiet little town, not some place you'd expect this to happen. The only thing in Farmington besides a little motel is a hospital. It was a Friday afternoon. She came home from a day of classes at Mount Blue Junior High School. She was 15 years old. She went back out walking on foot. She had blonde hair, hazel eyes, and was petite. She was walking to a babysitting job where she hoped to earn a little money to give to her parents who were struggling financially at the time. Not unusual for Maine, especially middle Maine, where that is. It's like my mother's area. Nobody's rich up there, you know, they get by paycheck to paycheck. A lot of farmers up in Maine that just barely get by, so that's not unusual. Her father was a house painter, had been out of work for a year with medical problems. And there were 9 children. Excuse me. And she had never been in trouble, so when she disappeared, they couldn't imagine. Judith was the shyest of all the children, according to her mother, Lillian, and the least likely to get into a car with a stranger. Yet police believe Judith was taken in broad daylight, less than a mile from her home, because she never arrived at the babysitting job, which was at the home of a relative. The disappearance wrested the public's attention away from the ongoing Farmington Fair. Her family, though poor, offered a large reward for any information leading to an arrest in the case. A frantic search ended nearly 2 weeks later off High Street. Today, the property houses the University of Maine at Farmington's Health and Fitness Center. Oh yes, there's a part of the University of Maine's in Farmington as well. Affectionately referred to as the Beaver Dome. Back then, it was a family-owned sawmill. She was actually found in a pile of sawdust, because they would shoot their sawdust into a pile, you know, it would come out of the machine into a big pile. And she was found in that pile. In fact, dogs located her in the pile of sawdust. It had been there some time and the sawdust was wet. and that generates heat. The conditions had accelerated decomposition because she was in that pile, and all that's generating heat, and heat quickens decomposition. Making it more difficult to find evidence, obviously. The community was said to be equal parts shocked and enraged. Larry Hand, Judith's brother, is one of many who supports the funding of a dedicated cold case unit that would work full-time on solving murder cases that have continued to confound the efforts of homicide detectives. It's not just her out there, he said. It's a lot of other people, too. A little update. That cold case unit, in spite of the governor's efforts to block it, has finally been created. It is up and running now, thanks to families like the Hand family and families like the family of Kimberly Morrow, who we talked about in our last Maine episode. They worked tirelessly, along with many volunteers, many petitioners, including myself, working on Kimberly Morrow Facebook group that I share with her sisters. And we got it done. So, thank you, Lord. If you have any information in this case, you can call the Maine State Police at 207-624-7143. It's interesting because it says in-state, and then it gives you a number to call out of state, and it's the same phone number. Not sure why they did that. Blast from the past. Constance Fisher was a mother. She murdered 6 children. She lived in Fairfield, Maine, which is actually where my great aunt lives now. In fact, my mother talked about this case with her aunt, and her aunt remembered hearing about it vaguely because it was a very long time ago. The first murders took place on March 8th, 1954. They were Richard, age 6, Daniel, age 4, and Deborah, age 1. The second set of murders took place on June 30th, 1966. Kathleen, age 6, Michael, age 4, and Natalie, 9 months. She was put in the Maine State Hospital after the first set. At Augusta after the first set of drownings, and at some point she was released saying she was fine. So her and her husband proceeded, same husband, he stuck by her, proceeded to have 3 more children, whom she again drowned in the bathtub. Sound familiar? She had been tossed around a little bit as a girl. She did finally move in with a well-to-do arm of her family, and but she was always a little strange from what they've said. I read a book about her, actually. It's called The Constance Fisher Tragedy by Bob Briggs. Highly recommend it. Probably aren't going to find it in the store because it's pretty old. You might have to, well, what I did is get it on the tablet. You might have to do that, or you might have to shop Amazon or somewhere that you can get older books. Yeah, she was declared cured and returned home. She, again, drowned 3 children. Her husband was left absolutely devastated and heartbroken because he was told she was cured. So you can imagine how angry and upset that poor man was. She did make visits to her family doctor and the psychiatrist. Both told the family that they needed to leave the 2-room cabin they were in with no running water and no facilities of any kind, because it just wasn't good for her. I mean, they even chipped ice for water. So that's when they moved to Waterville to be closer to family and to a downtown area. And it was after that it happened. They just thought that it would be better for them. After she killed the second set, she went back to the state hospital, and she killed herself. October 1st, 1973, she stepped off the hospital grounds and threw herself into the Kennebec River. Her body was found nearly a week later in South Gardiner. Now, I don't know how far away that is exactly. I'd have to look it up. But, and then Carl died, what his nurses believe, of a broken heart. Special feature case. Baby Jane Doe. Frenchville, Maine. This is way, 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 way up north. It was December 7th, 1985. She died of exposure because her mother gave birth to her and left her in a gravel pit. A dog, a Siberian husky named Paka, discovered her frozen body and carried her to its owner's home less than a quarter of a mile away. Its devastated owners think that the dog either smelled the baby or maybe heard the baby before the baby died, and that's what made the dog go. And the dog picked up the baby by the head like a puppy, like one of its puppies, and carefully took it home and banged on the door, like, get out here, get out here. And they couldn't imagine why he was banging on the door so quickly and so ferociously. And they saw the baby. The baby was completely frozen. They think it took about 30 minutes for that baby to die because it was 30 degrees below zero. Think about that. You already have a tiny little body. No clothing. And it's 30 degrees below zero. You can barely control your own body temperature at that size. They believe that a woman either drove there or was driven there, gave birth there, because there was blood on the ground in footprints in the snow. And there was still an umbilical cord attached to the baby. So they believe the mother gave birth there. They also believe the mother may have been from Canada, again, because it was far north. They weren't that far from the Canadian border. There was a little bit of woods over here, and the Canadian border was right there. In 2014, the Maine State Police Major Crimes Unit said every once in a while a phone call or other information comes in and we work it. This was Sergeant Detective Darren Crane, who is now lead detective in this case. By the way, the baby weighed 6 pounds, 8 ounces, and had reddish blonde hair. The retired investigator who's the original lead on the case would not comment on the case for the story that I read because it is an open investigation. But again, they believe that she may very well have been from Canada. This was a gravel pit access road near the intersection of US Route 1 and Pelletier Avenue. Pelletier Avenue, I believe, is where the people lived. Oh, yeah, it is. Because the people were named Pelletier. The street was named after the people whose dog found the baby, or at least after their family. Armand Pelletier said during a recent interview, this was again in 2014, he says something you just don't forget. He said he remembers it like, and his wife said she remembered it like it was yesterday. And he recalled what I already told you, which is that the dog was banging on the door with its paws and trying to get somebody's attention. He carried her so carefully that he didn't do any damage to the body whatsoever. The state medical examiner's report was not released for this article. And the current whereabouts of baby Jane Doe cannot be determined. I went, what? Once again, we've lost a human corpse. You know, didn't we already go through this in another case a while back where they lost a human body? I can't understand. There were some wounds in her head, but they were superficial. And they don't believe that the dog hurt the baby in any way. The sheriff's office wants to be clear about that. And they're not giving up. They also want to be clear about that. They will work anything new that comes in. Someone has the key to the mystery, they have no doubt. The Pelletiers are now in their early 60s and are left to wonder if the missing puzzle piece is the mother herself. And I agree. Or maybe a dad who's wondering, what's my baby? You know, I know she was having a baby. You know, maybe they broke up or something. She got mad. I don't know. But there's got to be someone. There got to be grandparents saying, my daughter was pregnant. She never had a baby. The Pelletiers never had children. They couldn't. So what they've said is they don't understand why she didn't want her baby. She said, why didn't she leave the baby on our steps, ring our doorbell? We would have raised the baby. They sound like wonderful, wonderful folks. The Pelletiers moved to Bangor the following summer, and Paca lived to be 12 years old, dying of cancer in 1987. Well, Paca, you're a hero. There's no statute of limitations because it's homicide. If identified, they could be facing homicide or manslaughter charges. It would be up to the Maine Attorney General what the charge would be. And the Assistant Attorney General says he doesn't know if the case will ever be solved. Such cases are unsolvable. I don't necessarily believe that, but if that's what he wants to believe, he's entitled to his opinion. Lorraine Pelletier said, I think of it all the time, especially every December when we see a husky dog. It is something in our life that will never leave us. Well, God bless the Pelletiers and their dog. If you have any information, you can call the Maine State Police Troop F at 800-924-2261 or 207-532-5400. Thank you for joining us this time. I hope that we've informed you. I hope that we've enlightened you, and maybe someone watching on television or on YouTube even has information about one of these cases that we've talked about. Thank you again for listening to our local crime history. It can be fascinating, it can be a little scary. Thank you again for continuing to watch my show and support what I do, because this is a passion of mine. It has been for many years. Have a wonderful, happy, and safe Father's Day this weekend. Goodbye and God bless.